Ah, Smart Water, now in a sleek can.
This feels cool, literally.
Perfect for social gatherings and on the go.
Should I start wearing turtlenecks?
One sip at a time, friend. Smart Water cans, for those with a taste for taste. Get yours today.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile, with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I know you're disappointed. I know you thought you'd heard the last of the left versus the right. I know you thought that Lionel would just be a figment of your imagination and I would be no part of your imagination, but we're back. We're back. And don't even try to tune your station to your dial to another station. We have technology that locks your radio into 77 WABC in New York, where the left versus the right, and back again. My buddy for 30 years, clearly the vocabulary magician of our era, a man who only takes advice from God himself. Lionel is here. Lionel, good afternoon.
Well, that introduction, that prolegomenon, that précis, that proem, that intro, that certainly would not fall under the rubric of encomium, but nonetheless, it's good, and I appreciate that. I enjoy how somehow we have conned people into thinking that we're left versus right,
yes,
and that we're saying anything of note. We end up having so much fun talking about things that only matter to us.
Yes. And here's something that will matter to everyone, is that the jobs report came out yesterday, 177,000 new jobs, unemployment rate holding firm at 4.2%. A little bit of deceleration in the feeling that companies have that they will not be able to keep up with the ramifications of the president's tariffs, but nothing that was changing anybody's life from yesterday. And apparently President Trump and his people, Stephen Miller, who is now thought to be the first choice, perhaps to be the new Homeland Security person. But they were gloating over these statistics, and they say that this shows how the president's plan is working. How do you feel about that?
It's almost like a physician who removes all life support and the patient doesn't die. It's like, good. I must be doing something right, because they imagine this is going to be the end. The tariffs will kill. It will be the destruction of society. And they're saying, nope, not even close. So people are saying, what do we do with this? Trump could he be right? Could he be right? Could he actually be right with his tariffs and this tough? Because I'm sure you are privy to more insight than I am, but the people that I know who are pretty good say, the way they really think is exactly the way you think. China's thinking, listen, pick up the phone. Hello, Don. Yeah, Xi here. Listen, if anybody tells you I didn't call you, what are you doing to me? Let's work this thing out. And we'll go on TV like professional wrestling. And we said, and you're going to get you, Patterson, next week at the Garden. And a cut. And then we go home together and have a beer. So I think behind the scenes, from what I'm hearing, there is tremendous negotiation and talk to perhaps work something out, which was precisely the point of this in the first place. Don't be surprised if things actually improve. God forbid.
And when you have a plan such as the one he had, you sort of need the chaotic conditions to precede the implementation of the plan. Mm-hmm. And it certainly would seem, even yesterday, the Chinese government, I don't know who it was that said, but it was a news story that they would like to sit down, negotiate with the president. And they kind of hinted that you didn't tell the truth when you said you're already spoken to us.
Right.
But we'd still like to sit down and talk to you, and maybe maybe we can get this worked out. Now, meanwhile, Lionel, the president has now put out the beginning forms of his big, as he calls it, his big, beautiful budget plan. And it's kind of interesting because there is some antagonism for it from members of the House and the Senate. And even those who have pledged to support him no matter what. In fact, Senator Mike Smucker. Yes, exactly. No, I have that wrong. It's actually Lloyd Smucker, who's a House member on the Ways and Means Committee from Pennsylvania, the son of Mother and Father Smucker. He is really saying that some of the things that President Trump is proposing are not going to work with the House. And it was actually Senator Mike Crapo. It's Senator Mike Crapo, Lionel, from Idaho, kind of the toilet bowl of the far west. Senator Crapo also said that he can't support one of the ideas that Trump put in his plan was not to tax anyone that made under $200,000 a year, which, if I didn't know better, I would have thought AOC put that in there.
Yes.
But the president had a way that the tariffs, the money we would get from the tariffs, would cover the taxes that people $200,000 a year.
Democrat, Mr. Crapo.
He's a Republican, Mr. Crapo.
Crapo, about the Crapo.
Now, there are some Crapos who are Democrats
Crapo,
in the Senate and House, but he's the one Republican Crapo.
And as you know, Crapo is similar to crapulence, which means intoxication or inebriety. So I think there's a connection there somehow. You do the math. Does any of this really matter to any? I mean, do you think the average person is following every vicissitudinal hiccup and every, the thing which I find so interesting about this is that try to figure out where the president is now. Have you ever observed birds? They're starlings. They move. It's called a murmuration. They move in these swaths, these like blobs, these punctuation marks, these Rorschach tests, these ink blots, and they all work and they fly in unison.
It's almost scripted.
Right. It is. It's called the rule of 7, which I'll explain one day. But they figured out, how do they do this? That's like watching Trump. He's over here, and then he's over here, and then we're over here. Oh, and then, look, there's Stephen Miller. And then there's this, and then, there's Zelensky. Oh, they made a mineral deal. So much, no more war. Why? Because we're there. Ta-da! I'm going to bring peace to Ukraine, for example, by owning it. Okay, then we're over here. Then Stephen Miller says something, and then Caroline Levis says something, and then we have and try following the bouncing ball. So these are incredibly important stories for 5 minutes.
Yes.
And then we're off to something else.
I think you're absolutely right. But we have a whole hour to do so.
No. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to. Please don't get choked up. I understand this means a lot to you. No, but my question is this to you. And I say this with all due respect because I love this president for many reasons. Do you think he has any idea of what he's saying? Or does he say, hey, guess what? I'm going to say that I want to give a tax break. Anybody over $200,000. Who can be against that? Go ahead and say it. Watch this. And he says it, and he sits back, and he says, look who came out against that. Or I'm going to say that I'm going to, I don't want to jump the gun, like this week, I'm going to end NPR. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to have an executive order. And then we're going to talk about Kilmar. Okay. And then, so it's follow the bouncing ball.
It's almost as if he's in the White House kitchen.
Yes.
And he's cooking a pot of spaghetti.
Right.
And he takes the spaghetti out and throws it against the wall. And the parts that stay become part of his plan.
And compare and contrast this to his predecessor, he was in Rehoboth Beach, walking around yelling, who ordered the veal cutlet? He had no idea where he was. Nothing happened. The auto pens were going. You could hear the hum. They went through 4 or 5 different sets of auto pens as they're signing things. He is on it. He is working on it. The other day, the White House was agog in more activity I have a very close personal friend, or a person I know, my wife, who happened to be in Washington then, and the activity was incredible. The White House they have never seen the buzz and the hum. So I don't mean to digress. I think it's an important point, but just wait 5 minutes. It's like they say about the weather in Florida. If you don't like it, wait 5 minutes, it'll change. There's going to be something else right after that. He might change his mind. He might be something else. If you can keep track of this, good.
Well, it's interesting because certainly the feeling is that he will be able to work out his budget plan. This might be a little period where he gave everyone a chance to, impress the people in their own districts by making some of these comments.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's still holding the better hand in this bridge game. And it's probably, and they have till September 30th to do this. So we don't really have to worry about too much more of it today. But what we do have to worry about is, I understand, or actually you informed me, but I did hear about it yesterday, that a man was sexually assaulting a dead man on the subway.
Yes.
Can you opine on that rather rare occurrence?
Can I explicate, limb, expatiate, describe, adumbrate, dissect, plumb the depths of that?
You left me at expatiate.
Plumb the depths of that paraphilic necromancy. I now just imagine
necromancy is in necrophilia.
Yeah, right, exactly right. But
okay.
this
I got one of them.
Well, right. But it's a family show. I was trying to be rather circuitous. But here is this. This is my favorite part. After this is a family show, and with young folks, I really don't want to corrupt your mind. But not only did he have his way with this dead man, but it was rather involved. Let me just leave it at that. Any kind of romantic activity with a dead person is involved. But this was particularly, one had to be agile and adroit. Let me give you this. Do we have the theme from Deliverance? Can we? Dun, 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 dun. All he needed to say was, "You got a nice mouth. Squeal like a pig." All right. This is what. Now, imagine you are you're from Butte, Montana, Valdosta, Birmingham, Smithville, Iowa, and you're there with your family, and you've been told New York is not as bad as it was.
And then you get on the subway.
And you look over, and you say, "Don't look right now." But if I didn't know better, I would think that man is dead. And wait, as you see in QVC. But wait, there's more. I think he's having his way with this dead man. And he was. And they caught it on tape. And here is the best part. What they're saying now is, and he was an illegal alien. I'm thinking, who cares?
Just a minor inconvenience to the rest of us.
It's like that.
By the way,
put the nail in the coffin, sort of a bad pun, but that was, it was like, well, it happens, but he was an illegal.
By the way, when they arrested him,
yes,
was he smoking a cigarette?
That's right. Wow.
Well, so we move on to probably more erudite subjects.
That was smooth. That was a good transition. but imagine he's in jail. He's in a holding cell. And somebody says, "What are you in for?" He says, "Well, it's complicated. It's hard to say exactly what I did."
Right. So, as the city embellishes on this latest situation, statistics came out this week that show that New York has lost $9 billion in the last 5 years because its residents are moving to Miami and Palm Beach. I was actually a little surprised because if you spent enough time, particularly in Palm Beach, you would come back 3 weeks later.
Well, it's funny you say that. I am a native Floridian, second generation. And those of us who were born there are called affectionately crackers, not the way that you might have, not that you would, but not in the racially charged version of it, but it came from the idea of homesteaders who would crack the whip as they went across the state.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So I am from there, second generation, and I can tell you, I love the people there. It gave me life, my family. But I have this fear, this dream where somebody's going to say, we're going back home. And I said, what? I left Florida, and I mean, it's great, but there is nothing like here. Now, the taxes notwithstanding. But they said that Governor Cuomo, that his sign or his symbol should have been the U-Haul trailer or something. How many congressional seats did we lose by virtue of people leaving?
Oh.
I mean, now I don't know if that's all his fault. There were other countervailing reasons as well. But the exodus is a very serious problem.
2018 was a bad year.
Yeah.
2020 was a bad year.
But if you move to Florida, Palm Beach, whatever, that's nice. But I hope you like Publix. And I hope you like golf, which is terrific, but the heat is just absolutely. So I'm kind of with you on that one. I know of what I speak and from whence I speak.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. Now I've spent a good amount of time down there, not the way you did, and never actually lived there. And I found the people to be very modest, very easygoing. And so I just wonder how they'll feel when, a number of New Yorkers come down there, and, well, it'll help the economy. I'll say that.
Well, Florida has no income tax in the Constitution. Cost of living is, or at least it was a part of it. Listen, I can't in any way say anything bad about it. But I will tell you, and this is something which I want to discuss as well with you. I am convinced that people will vote, like I feel, even though notwithstanding there are people like our Curtis Lee and other people who are considering throwing their hat into the ring and are indeed running. I believe the man to beat will be Governor Cuomo. And you and I can say anything we want, knowing what we know about COVID and the response to this and this and this controversy. But to most people, of the few who are going to vote in the first place, it doesn't matter. This is what I want to ask you. Why doesn't it matter? I don't. It's like the people who say you have to bring back Kilmar Garcia because he was deprived of due process. He's a killer, ostensibly. I don't care. You must bring him back.
Well, that's a little bit about what we talked about last week, where, as I admitted to you last week when I first heard he was over there, and then I heard that the White House admitted he was over there, and then I heard that the Supreme Court said that the White House should make arrangements to send him back. I thought all of that was right. But then when, as I said to you last week, when you read his record, he's in a car with 8 people and the rest of them had escaped from other places. Yeah. His wife can't answer when you ask her whether or not she felt that he might kill her. That is totally different. But there's some people that once they get locked in, and I'll give it to them, they're like poker players who just play out the hand, even though they're losing it, and then bang, they've lost all their money. And that's what I think happened. Well, we are on WABC, and now that all of you have stayed and decided to listen to the show, we'll release the technology we have that locks you into this station. But we will be back in about a minute or two, right after we have a word from our sponsors and to find out what's going on here on WABC. Lionel with David Paterson, the right versus the left. If you really believe that, I have some land for you in the Azores.
It's the left versus the right.
Hi, this is Joe from Vanta. In today's digital world, compliance regulations are changing constantly, and earning customer trust has never mattered more. Vanta helps companies get compliant fast and stay secure with the most advanced AI, automation, and continuous monitoring out there. So whether you're a startup going for your first SOC 2 or ISO 27001, or a growing enterprise managing vendor risk, Vanta makes it quick, easy, and scalable. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. Get started at Vanta.com.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. Not everyone is careful with your personal information, which might explain why there's a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds in the US. Fortunately, there's LifeLock. LifeLock monitors hundreds of millions of data points a second for threats to your identity. If your identity is stolen, a US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Save up to 40% your first year by visiting lifelock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for a light and fit remix. Like a crunchy storm of graham cookies, caramel pearls, and dark chocolate, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 light and fit remix varieties with craveable flavors and up to 120 calories and 10 grams of protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See remixyogurt.com.
It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
We're back. The left versus the right. 77 WABC. It is just nearly 3:30, just a half hour, a little more before John Sterling makes his second appearance. He did his first show.
It was tremendous.
He talked about Juan Soto for 50 minutes, and then he went home. And so Lionel is here with me. We're happy to be with you. But we've gotten some calls. They want to hear more about the dead man on the subway.
Well, yeah, right. Well, there's a dead man switch, but this is a little bit too extreme. May I say something about Mr. Kilmar? Garcia, what have you. Everybody said this. There's nothing that I'm saying this, that novel, Governor, but I will tell you this much. What President Trump has to do is say, okay, here's what we're going to do. You want a hearing? I'll give you a hearing. Judge Paterson, good. We're going to fly your ass down to El Salvador. We're going to go to the embassy, the U.S. embassy. There's nothing that says that we have to physically have him in Manhattan or White Plains or, you need to have the trappings of the jurisdiction of a federal court. The embassy will suffice. We have a federal judge who would, or we can do it online, on Zoom, remote. We'll give you a hearing. It'll last 30 seconds and all is well. You've got your hearing. If your argument is procedural, if it's due process, we will give you notice, opportunity to be heard, and that sort of thing too. The substantive issue of whether the government or the president has the right to shut you down, that's another story. And that I think his right, his abilities are plenary, as we say. I think he can pretty much, you do not have the any kind of right
or standing
or there's nothing justiciable about it. Nothing. You are at the pleasure of, so to speak, of the president of this government. We grant this to you. You're not entitled to anything. It's I think we've lost track. But these lefties, and I do not include you in that, notwithstanding the title of this show, but they've glommed onto this as though this is their cause. Why? What do they care about this? I have friends of mine, I'm sure you do too. One friend of mine she says, I'm going to be a dual citizen, Scotland. And I've got to go through the process right now. I'm getting my birth certificate and my grandmother's birth certificate. And I'm going to the embassy and and she's a lefty. And she, of course, I said, why do you got to go through all that? Just go to, Edinburgh and say, hey, I'm staying here. Just do there what you want Mr. Kilmar to do here. Why are you doing this? Why are you so special? And they can't answer that question.
And particularly with the information that came out about him.
Yes.
And at first, you kind of know that anything the government could throw on the wall about him would be embraced by a lot of people.
Yeah.
But then when it became clear that he was a danger to his family, that he had violated his wife violently on occasions, and that kind of thing.
And did he not say, sir, that I can't go back? Well, because of the gangs, because I'm MS-13 or whatever. But here's the best part. They're saying, President Trump, you said that he had MS-13 on his knuckles. That was Photoshopped. It's like, that's your complaint? Forget everything else. That's like saying, Charles Manson, that swastika on his forehead, that was Photoshopped.
Right.
It's Charles Manson. I know, but that's why they zero in on something and they substitute that erratum for something that indicates, dare I say, sir, the gravamen of the argument. That
strangely enough, trying to clean up the support for him by finding a way to diminish the accusations against him. But once the accusations got to people who knew him, that should have been the end of the line. You know, sometimes you have to jump off the ship.
Right.
And for some reason, no one to hold him. And even Kenny Rogers would have known that there was no further place to go.
But of all the people, I'm sorry, do you think somebody would say, could you please find for me a Consuela Hernandez Perez, this wonderful kindergarten teacher who worked 2 or 3 jobs and got caught up in the quagmire, a beautiful person, scarfed up, picked up, dropped into some hellhole, some devil's island or whatever. That might be good. That might, you know what I'm saying? That might actually be beneficial.
And that's
why this guy?
That's the discretion that I think Homeland Security and also the appropriate agencies have. And in that situation, a couple of times they haven't exercised it, and it looks bad. It looks bad for them.
But they don't care. How about the fact that they're screaming that the president is a convicted felon, which one could say, was there ever a formal finding? Oh, we can argue this and that, regarding a charge that no one, learned hand, couldn't figure out what he was charged with. I don't even understand what nobody does. It's one of those things. And I don't want to jump the subject, sir, because I know you have a carefully crafted litany, a schedule of things. But do you find it not at all odd that Letitia James, who was his Torquemada, herself might be brought down by virtue of kind of the same thing? You know what I'm saying? Glass houses, physician heal thyself, whatever the maxim is. Isn't that interesting?
No one is above the law. That was her quote. That had been the president's quote about other people that he saw sent away. Remember, he thought no one was above the law before they even got tried, like the Central Park crew. And then 13 years later, that got turned around on him.
But this is the woman who started off a priori.
Yes,
who
exactly.
Said, I'm going to... She was Lavrenti Beria. This was Stalin's man who says, show me the man, I'll show you the crime. Before anybody even came, she says, I'm here running on putting him in jail. This is the attorney general. Before, not only is it target prosecution, but then maybe, perhaps it is alleged that she's acting a la Ilhan Omar and may have, theoretically, married her father according to mortgage documents, if all this pans out to be true. I mean, this is blatant, if true. She is, of course, presumed innocent. Nobody's charged with anything. But you would know this. Don't you, when you go into politics, doesn't somebody say to you, listen, before you go on and accuse somebody of something, make sure you didn't do this yourself. Don't they teach you that in Politics 101 or whatever you...
Oh, absolutely. Now, Lionel, you've touched on an issue that is very important.
It's the dead guy again, isn't it?
No, we're done with him. But it is this need that it's on both sides of the aisle, but lately it's been far more on the left than on the right, where if you embrace someone, you just continue.
Yes.
You just continue to find reasons why the court finding or whatever couldn't have been what it was. There's no way. He never bothered his wife. He was father of the year at MS-13 one year. But and yet people will do this when I feel that in the back of their minds they know that they're not 100% sure of what they speak, and I think that's damaging the conversation in this country right now, regardless of people's ideology.
To dovetail, segue into something which is even more interesting. Not only do they all of a sudden find themselves, fixated by somebody. There's a weird kind of a sexual fetish. Speaking of which, hybristophilia or something, I don't know the name of it. But it's where women sometimes will find attractive people who are criminals, a la Luigi Mangione or the Night Stalker.
Right.
But sometimes I think the same thing by analogy happens with the left who will attach themselves to somebody who is obviously wrong, or in reverse, will turn against somebody, a la President Trump, notwithstanding the evidence, the facts. It doesn't matter. It's as though it's the team. I had a friend of mine years ago who came from Ireland, and he wanted to be a part of it. He lived in Sunnyside. And he says, I don't know anything about baseball. So he went to a Mets game. He bought the apparel, the accoutrement. And when they stood up, he stood up. And when they clapped, he clapped. And he goes, yeah. And pretty soon he says, I like this baseball. I don't know what you're doing, but I like this. We drink beer. And I think it has something to do with that ball and that wall. And that's kind of what they do. They say, I like being a part of the left. Yes, Trump, TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Yes. We hate him. Yes. Luigi. Yes. I don't know why I'm feeling like this, but I'm part of the crowd. And as Gustave Le Bon said, a clockracy, it's mob mentality. Sure. And they really don't know what they're talking about. Because if somebody did that to their daughter or anything like that, they would not be clamoring for their return. But it's this, you lose your mind in the groundswell, in the murmuration, in this weird crowd pattern.
Well, and what I think adds to it is that if it's loud enough and it's deep enough,
yes,
that the media will embrace it without even looking in to what some of the charges are. And that's why people who are accused are just sometimes put in such a difficult mental state because they know they didn't do something, but all these people said they did.
AOC and Bernie Sanders flying first class to rail against oligarchies and plutocracies and timocracies, and okay, fine, that's one thing. Nobody knows what that is. And by the same thing, they're clamoring against this, and then you have other people who are just this is their and then you have the left who loved EV and electric cars. We're now told we hate Elon Musk and they drive Teslas. Okay, let's key them. Even though we're telling you, they record you. How do you explain that? This man is an environmental hero if you believe what you say you believe. But now you hate him because somebody rang the bell and this week's victims or those we loathe changed? Do you have any consistency in your method? Anything? Do you just go with the wind? Oligarchs and... I don't think they know what the hell they're talking about.
That is the voice of Lionel. I am the voice of...
Reason,
yes.
As Ed Koch.
Ed Koch. It's interesting when you get you get a nickname, like AOC. She didn't call herself AOC. No. Other people did.
Her nickname, her name used to be Sandy when she was... I think she was at the Union Square. She was a hostess or something. She was just a regular,
She was a bartender.
Yeah. Bartender, but also, I remember people heard, I think she was just Sandy Cortez from either Westchester. Then all of a sudden she's from the barrio and Latina and okay, fine,
I have known people who I knew for a long time. And then because of that phenomenon, when you see them, you can barely understand the English they're saying because they have indoctrinated themselves. But we will be back to speak English and other languages in just a few minutes. We're here on 77 WABC, The Left versus the Right. We're here every Saturday afternoon between 3 and 4 o'clock. And it's been my pleasure for the last 3 weeks, because he just can't get enough of me, to have Lionel
I've had it.
as my co-host. We'll be back. And at that point, maybe Lionel will ask me a question or two.
It's the left versus the right.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Custom window treatments are a small upgrade that have a big impact. No better time to shop than now at Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. Shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day Mega Sale now. Save up to 50% site-wide, plus a free measure. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
It's the left versus the right. Debate. Heavyweight slugfest.
Welcome back to The Left versus the Right here on 77 WABC on this Saturday afternoon. We're happy that all of you joined us. We know that you had to join us if you had your radio on, because it doesn't play any other station until further into the day. I'm David Paterson. My guest and co-host is Lionel, and it's very interesting because, speaking of broadcasting and radio programming, President Trump has promised to defund PBS. He has promised to defund NPR, and he has promised to defund WABC if they allow David Paterson to come on for a few more weeks. But I'm sure John will call him up and get that one abridged.
John will say, "You're funding me? I didn't know about this."
Right, exactly. So what do you think about that?
I think it goes to show you the prerogative of the president. I know many of us are absolutely, I guess, ecstatic over this symbolically. He did not, and let's make sure we understand, he did not prohibit it. He didn't say you can't do this.
He just said we're not going to fund it.
Yeah, I don't understand it. It's just, for example, by analogy, when the Dobbs case came out, which overruled Roe and Casey actually overruled Roe against Wade, but it didn't say abortion was illegal. It didn't say, it just said there's no constitutional basis. So people have to understand, first of all, what is the issue here? He said we're not going to pay for it. If you want it, go ahead and do it. Do you think Fox News should be supplemented by the government? People to the left would say, of course not. Well, what's the difference? Well, this is tradition, and I've never understood why the government was involved in that. You talk about there is no establishment clause for journalism, but maybe there should be.
Tell me how that would work.
Well, the idea of the First Amendment deals with two clauses, the free exercise clause and the establishment clause.
Right.
Congress shall pass no law to affect the free exercise of religion unless it's peyote, unless it's, something we don't like. But the establishment clause was that the government cannot ever be involved in the endorsement, the ratification, the speaking one way or another as to religion. Even though we have in God we trust on coinage and in courtrooms, we have a chaplain in the Senate. I don't understand how they figure that out. So the establishment clause means we don't want the government to be involved in religion. There's no such thing as the Anglican Church here. There's no such thing as the United States religion. Well, I think we should apply that to journalism. There is no such thing as the United States opinion. Because if you're funding PBS, one could argue you are endorsing, ratifying, standing by, giving claim to this particular ideology. If not, why would you be funding it? It's almost like you're endorsing it.
Now, what if another type of media outlet that was more to the president's liking, conservative, basically, comes on the air? They're looking for federal funding, and who knows that this didn't happen. And the federal government didn't give it to them because the president at that time might have been Barack Obama or it might have been Joe Biden. So what you're really saying is that they would have had a right to do that, and President Trump has a right to just say, listen, we have a certain amount of money in this budget. You can talk about me all you want, but you're going to have to find your own friends to pay for it because I'm not going to help.
Precisely. And I don't have to give you a reason.
Right.
I see nothing wrong with it. I understand why he's doing that. I understand exactly why he's doing it. But I also want to find out, first of all, do we know, is Elon gone? Has he left the stadium? Has he left the arena? Is he gone? I know Doge had 130 days, but...
yeah, he had 130 days, and we just finished the president's 100th day, so I'd figure by the end of this month, he should be...
So he came along and he basically found out one of the issues. He found out that USAID was buying fake, allegedly, subscriptions to various... So I'm wondering, with that removal, how much was that funding? How much, in addition to this NPR in particular and PBS, was the government actually funding through these NGOs and hidden things? I think the government should not be involved in this at all. I have a problem with "In God We Trust" on the coins. I have a problem with, remember it was the New Now decision, under God. Remember the Pledge of Allegiance. One
Right.
nation under God. Now, it's not mandatory. You don't have to say that. But it was enacted in 1950-something at the behest of the Knights of Columbus to show those heathen, pagan Ruskies that we're a country that believes in God. And it's in the actual adoption. It's a law that adopts and recognizes the Pledge of Allegiance as, who, by the way, Bellamy, who wrote the original one, was a socialist. And by the way, while we're on the subject, do you know the way you originally pledged allegiance? By putting your hand out towards the flag like this, which looks a little bit like that German fellow with the funny mustache. So they would put him in the heart. So the story behind the flag. So I don't want to get too much off on this, but...
By the way, for our listeners at home, Lionel put his hand out, reaching for the flag.
Yeah, right.
The flag didn't move.
Yes. But there was, but at the time, I was saying there was a statute, and maybe this isn't the legislative intent, but there was a statute that provides that the Pledge of Allegiance is our official whatever, because it recognizes God. And by that, I thought it was unconstitutional, even though it's not mandatory. I want religion and government to be separated. But people like Scalia said, oh, come on. It's just anecdotal. It's historic. Nobody means "In God We Trust." We're not looking at our coins and praying to, But I don't think it should be involved in anything. What if they said there is no God? that you're also passing on the legitimacy of the existence of a monotheistic not being so. So anyway, I am against religion, but I'm also against the government funding particular ways of thinking, even if it's Fox News. The government is neutral. It's not supposed to be involved in the opinion. By the way, Voice of America, we'll get into that later, whether that's legitimate or not. I'm very hardcore about this. Government is very limited to what it's doing, and endorsing speech is not one of their duties.
It might surprise you, but I'm not very far away from how you feel about that. And one of the reasons is that whenever you...
Well, I changed my mind.
Whenever you invoke some kind of a rule. Now, I specifically remember that there was somebody, and I don't want to say second grade or third grade, who didn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance and got kicked out, of the classroom. They had to wait in the hall until we got to like our second class where you didn't have to say a pledge before that. But that it inevitably, the school held that if the kid didn't want to stand inside during, and by the way, this kid never gave any reason.
Yeah.
He just didn't want to be there.
Well, the rule now is you do not have to do this. And then there were other religions.
And it was really the rule then, but
but they also said you're involving the stigma of a child who's opting out, and they say, what are you sitting there for? What's the matter? Don't you? And I have no problem with the Pledge of Allegiance, because at least you can say it's the country. There are something, granted, you shouldn't be beaten into, submission. I've got no problem with that at all. But religion is a completely different story. And Nino Scalia always hated the establishment clause. He said, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. Can you tell me why on our coins it says, in God we trust? I heard later on again, right around the 50s, some coins had it, but later on it was added again at the height of our Cold War, where Leave It to Beaver, actually, a lot of these were psyops and using Hollywood to keep funding the kitchen debates and how wonderful we are and look how modern and look at our family. We've got all this food and we're happy and we're Christian, and that may be great then, but I don't like that.
I hear you. I read a book once that was called In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. Yeah. Remember that?
Yes.
And but that really speaks to, I think, part of why there's so much derision and acrimony in society today is that people really want to impose their convictions 100% on everyone else.
And nobody's telling them they can't possess that. They're just saying, I'm not going to pay for it. Just like abortion. I don't know anybody who's for abortion. But the question is there a constitutional right to abortion? And Dobbs said, and others have been saying, no, because it's substantive due process. Life, liberty, or property cannot be deprived of you without due process. William O. Douglas in Griswold in 1965 came up with a penumbra and privacy, and what the hell is that all about? And then they applied it. Now, you and I could talk about this, but most people would say, what is he talking about? The Constitution is very limited. They don't even talk about marriage, the Air Force, how many justices there are. They don't talk about voting. They don't talk about one man, one vote. They don't talk about a lot of things. Divorce.
And we've had to kind of interpret what we think they would have said. But regardless of what they said, they were in a time period that was anachronistic. What we are is now a country that's got to figure out what we think is the most fair way to provide laws and to provide.
Well, let me ask you flat out. You think there's a constitutional right to sodomy? Answer the question. Do you think there's a constitutional, not that you should be, whether you should be arrested, it's a different story. But is there a constitutional right? Life, liberty, property. What are the rights granted? First Amendment, freedom of speech. Is there anything in any way that you could construe a particular means of, and let's leave the guy out of the equation in the subway, I would submit, no. There's nothing. That doesn't mean you have no option. You can go to your state capital and grant it, not grant it. There's nothing in there. And just because it's not in the Constitution doesn't mean it's illegal. That's all I'm saying. There's nothing that mandates either for or against it. Doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just not there. This is the rule book.
So why then do you think that we as a society today, and I mean Americans for the most part, are not evolved enough to actually understand that?
Oh, come
that,
on.
in other words, it's just not something that people follow.
It's a great question, but let me give you an example. I like tennis. I like to watch the U.S. Open for it. Blah, blah, blah. Imagine if somebody, there's a judge, line judge, and he says, I can't believe this. Can you believe this play is in? These people are so good. You know, these rules were written during the time of Don Budge and Bill Tilden, and come on. You know what? Even though this ball is in, I think the game is a living, breathing game. It expands. It's like a living constitution. You know what? I'm going to call this out. Because I think this rule does not comply with the state of the game, because tennis should be a living. And you say, wait a minute. You can't just say, I don't like this rule anymore. That's what they did in Griswold. They made up this thing called privacy. Right. They just made it up. That's like a line judge in Forest Hill saying, you know, I'm going to call this constructively, you know, you can't make things up. And the left should take heed, because if you can make something up, we can make it up too. And you don't want us to get creative when it comes to your rights.
Well, certainly there is a lot of misunderstanding about even how these Supreme Court decisions were reached.
Oh, yeah.
And what the remember that they waited for a while to issue the Supreme Court decision separate, but is not inherently equal and all that, because they thought it was such an important decision that they needed all 9 justices to vote the same way.
Is it Brown you're talking about?
Brown, yeah.
Brown and
the Board of Education of Kansas.
And it overruled, oh, God.
Plessy versus Ferguson.
Plessy, right. But
But
let me tell you how crazy these people are. I mentioned the Newdow case, Pledge case. I thought finally we're going to get, in the dicta or the concurring opinion, we're going to learn about the history of what does it mean? What does the Establishment Clause mean? What does In God We Trust? So they granted cert. They granted certiorari. They said, we'll take it. I said, I was so excited. You know what they did? They punted, because they said, by the way, this guy Newdow, he doesn't have standing because his daughter lives with the mother and he doesn't have standing as a parent. I said, you granted cert and that's it? You didn't? What? Why did you do that? You granted it and you were going to punt this thing anyway? I remember one time there was a case when I was a prosecutor called Schmerber against California. And it dealt with the issue of you have the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. Okay, what if I pull you over for drunk driving? And the only thing I want isn't your words. I want your breath. I want your breath stamp. I want your blood. I want ethyl alcohol per deciliter of whatever. I don't want your I want your blood. That's how I get you. You're guilty if you have over a 0.08. So if somebody doesn't give that up, is that or can somebody claim the Fifth Amendment? And I thought, that's interesting. So the Supreme Court said, no, that's non-testimonial. I said, what? But that's the case. You want this. And they said, no, Fifth Amendment we think is viva voce, talking and testimony, not your fingerprints. And I thought, okay, and I thought that was kind of interesting. But then again, nobody's going to overrule that. But I thought that was a fascinating case because sometimes and especially now with DNA and with your blood and your semen or your whatever it is, that is going to be the only evidence but the Fifth Amendment that doesn't apply because you're not giving testimony. Does that make sense? I don't know.
It probably doesn't, but it was their way of punting.
Yes, they said
on
we're
that
it.
case.
Yes.
I guess that's why NFL players that retire should go to the Supreme Court because they could punt all day.
Very good. By the way, speaking of which, did you hear of the NFL case? I forget what state. I read it very, very perfunctorily. And it's a they brought up, this may be something from law school, alienation of affections. There was some state where where if you lure somebody, you lure a woman away, you have a tort or cause of action against the man or woman, I guess, who lured. There's no blame to your spouse for leaving you, but the person who was. I thought that's fascinating.
He created the alienation of affection. Now, meanwhile, the woman or the man, whoever was the partner in this particular case, went willingly, but doesn't get charged in a situation like that. That's rather interesting.
Yeah, it's like me being charged with enticing you. Let me ask you another one. I have what they call Lionel's Law, which says the law always lags behind technology. Let's say you were to clone yourself. And for reasons we don't know, but you take an ovum, you evacuate it, put your DNA into it, zap it with electricity, bum, 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 it turns into whatever it is, goes into a woman, and your clone is born. There it is. Now, the woman comes around, there's a baby boy, that's terrific. What's his name? David. Oh, okay, David. And who are the parents? I'm going to put down here who are the parents? And the answer is your parents. Well, okay, it's your clone. Right. So listen, you've got the hospital bill. Well, I don't want to pay for this. Well, we're going to hit you with child support. Excuse me, it's not my child. It's me. This doesn't make any sense. It's you. It's me. So, do you have some kind of what is that? Think about that. It's me, and if you kill it. Is that suicide? I mean, I don't know, but that's.
What about if you killed it and then you had sex with it?
Oh, wait a minute, hold it. Would that be onanism? When people,
it would be onanism.
Yes, and I'm telling you, well, that's a different story, but it would be self-love. But in any event, and next time, well, if there's a next time, when we talk about AI and AGI and artificial intelligence, you don't know the existential threat that poses. You can't even grasp it, even a man of your mentation.
We're going to go from onanism to offism because our time is up. It's been great seeing you again, Lionel. Indeed. You just have to be a frequent visitor here.
No.
It's the only way I can maintain my sanity. And for all of you for listening in, thank you so much. And because you listened in, we are going to send you some gifts. All you need to do is take 3 blank checks, mail them to David Paterson and Lionel here at The Left versus the Right. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
At Arizona State University, we're bringing world-class education from our globally acclaimed faculty to you. Ranked #1 in innovation for 10 consecutive years and #2 among public universities for employability. ASU isn't just ahead of the curve. It's creating new paths to success. Earn your degree from the nation's most innovative university. Online. That's a degree better. Explore more than 300 undergraduate, graduate, and certificate programs at asuonline.asu.edu.